And that's why the Buddha said the source of suffering, the cause of suffering, is clinging, is craving, is desire. When you have expectations or attachments to things, when you wish for them to make you happy. So the training that we're undergoing, the training that we're looking to accomplish, or to achieve here, is to not suffer, is to free ourselves from all the baggage that we carry around about our experiences. We're not torturing you here. You're not tying you to the wall and beating you. The pain we experience in sitting is actually quite minimal, but because of our bad habits, because of our lack of training, we create all sorts of suffering out of the simplest things. It's too hot, it's too cold, it's too loud, it's too quiet, it's too boring, too dull, it's too stressful. We create baggage, we create problems. And so a reassurance for you all is that in the beginning it can be quite difficult because you're untrained. Not because the meditation is stressful, but as you train yourself, once you're present, when you experience things as they are, it's quite peaceful. It's quite effortless. It takes time to get there, but you get to the point where eventually you're able to experience things just as they are. And so our training is moment by moment to cultivate new habits, to cultivate the habit of mindfulness. And that's the other part of what needs to be said, is that this is about habits. Training is about changing our behavior, so it's something that has to be a habit, and it's dealing with and combating our bad habits. So a lot of what you're dealing with here is going to be not just the wrong reactions or reactions that cause suffering, but habits of reaction. Meaning that you might think that at some point you've figured it out and you've solved your problems and you've changed your behavior, you've learned how to respond and how to react properly, but in the next moment or the next sitting or the next hour or the next day, it all comes back because it's about habits. And so this is why meditation takes patience. So what you're doing here and why you're doing it again and again and again is because the mind is only made up of tendencies, patterns, habits. That's all we are. Our whole personality is just habits, which is exciting because you can change them. You can cultivate new habits, you can cultivate good habits, and you'll find it much easier to live, much easier to be. Which brings us to the next thing that needs to be said, is why we're doing this. Okay, we talk about being present, we talk about seeing things as they are. Why are we doing this? Why are we so concerned with, can't we just be happy with the way things are? Hey, things weren't so bad. When you come and meditate, that's one thing, is it starts to say, things weren't so bad, maybe I should just quit and go back. Because it's challenging, right? Meditation is a challenge, and there's a temptation to just go back and wallow in your ordinary suffering. But there are very good reasons to meditate. Our bad habits are quite dangerous. There's much danger out there. Death is a big one. Right? Maybe not your death, but the death of someone else. death of those you love, the loss of things you love. And there are all sorts of dangers out there. There's the danger of suffering, and so much danger for those, for as long as we still have clinging, as long as we still have craving. The danger that we won't get what we want. The simple danger that we'll be put in situations. It's not even a hypothetical danger. It's the danger we face every day. That maybe today we'll be put in a situation where we have to suffer. Not because of the situation, but because of our expectations. Because our patterns of behavior clash with the reality of the experience. At this moment I want to be entertained, I want to be pleased, I'm not being pleased. Reality doesn't accommodate our desires, doesn't accommodate our mind. And in fact it can't, because desire is something that accumulates. It's habitual and it becomes stronger and stronger, it feeds itself. So we become more and more desirous of the things that we want and more averse to the things that we dislike. That's why it's so stressful to sit. You sit and you think, "God, there's so much pain." It's not really. It's such a puny little pain, but you repeat the disliking of it again and again and again. You don't like it, and then it comes again and you don't like it again. Anything, the most minuscule thing, can drive you crazy. This is why we might be sitting and you hear a noise and it kind of irritates you. And then you hear the noise again and it significantly irritates you, and then you hear it again and again, and eventually you just want to blow up and yell at someone. Nothing to do with the sound. Nothing to do with the pain, nothing to do with the experience. Bad habits. You can see your habits forming. And then they become long-term habits, to the point where, for most of us, we think it's crazy, the idea that you could somehow be at peace with pain. I think pain is a problem. We're so ensconced in this idea, this bad habit, and believing that pain is a problem. So why we're doing it, really in a nutshell, is for this reason. Our ordinary life is fraught with problems, it's fraught with difficulties. If not yet, then to come. Looking at people who lose a loved one, and how stressful and how much suffering comes from that. When in fact, from a Buddhist point of view, it's like, what? They moved on, It's like, be happy for them, or at least not happy, be more concerned for them rather than sad. There's nothing to be sad about. All we're sad about is our own, it's somewhat selfish, in fact. We're not sad because, oh, that poor person died. We're sad because, oh, poor me, I can't see that person anymore. How cruel am I? No? How cruel does that sound? It's not very compassionate, I suppose. But it's the hard truth that we as meditators start to face. It's not even a hard truth, it's a wonderful, liberating truth. To realize that we're only causing ourselves suffering. There's no rational reason when you lose something or someone. There's no rational reason to be upset. I said this to a friend of mine, she got very upset at me. She said, she thought I meant that she knows that some people, no, she knew it would come across as telling people to deny their sadness. It's not about denying your grief, your shock. It's about realizing that it's a problem in and of itself. It has nothing to do with the loss. It's like, oh wow, I'm terribly untrained, unable to deal with reality. We're weak, no, that's really it. A weakness. So it's quite encouraging. You should feel quite proud, and not proud, but confident and encouraged and excited about how great it is to come and become strong. You know, the power that comes from just sitting through pain. Even your body shakes, sweat pours out of your armpits, your head feels like it's on fire. To sit with that, to just say, no, I'm not going to succumb. I'm not going to let it vanquish me. It's quite encouraging. So that's sort of why we do it, but the other part of why we do it is, what do we get out of it, right? What are we going to get out of this? And I always tell meditators not to think about what you're going to get out of it, not to sit there and say, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Don't have expectations, they don't help. But if you're confused or a little bit unsure of whether you're actually going to get anything out of this, then we can talk a little bit about what you get out of it. And the first thing is purity. That should be a good sort of standard for you to live by during your practice. The purity. Because you'll feel, you don't have to be told what is impure in the mind. You'll see that which is ridiculous and useless and harmful to you. That's the impurity. You can see it. You can see your mind as being so full of crap, full of garbage. You don't have to be told that it's garbage. You don't have to believe me that it's garbage. You'll see for yourself. You'll say to yourself, that's garbage. That's useless. That's harmful. I'm hurting myself. So if you want to know what you get out of it, or if you want to have a sense of what you're getting out of it, it's purity. Through simply seeing and as a result adjusting the nature of your mind, your mind becomes pure. By degrees, purer and purer, until so many other benefits accrue to you. You start to free yourself from depression, stress, anxiety, fear, worry, doubt, laziness. You're able to overcome suffering. You find that when there's pain, you're not upset by it. You don't suffer from it. You find that when things come that would normally make you sad, normally upset you, they don't upset you. You normally be averse to, you're no longer averse to. You'd normally be bored or turned off by, and you're able to bear with them mindfully and be at peace with them. You gain confidence. You feel sure of yourself. You find the right way, period, the right way. You find the way that is true and right and pure and clear and noble. And finally you become free. You feel free. So right now what you feel during the course, for the most part, what you feel is entrapped. That's why many meditators run away, because they start to feel quite trapped and they get overwhelmed by it. But it's not the meditation that's trapping you. Meditation allows you to stop and see how trapped you are, because if you keep running around the cage, it's possible, like a hamster in a wheel, right? The hamster doesn't know it's in a wheel. I don't know if it does or not. Maybe they know and they're just getting exercise, but it's possible. If you run around in the cage enough, you can feel like you're free. Not realize that you're bound. Which, it sounds kind of nice, but the truth is that there's great suffering. If you just keep denying the fact that you're suffering, avoiding it, right? You suffer, but then you avoid it. You find a way to fix it temporarily. So when you stop trying to fix it, you get to see how much suffering there really is. You get to see what you've sort of been ignoring about your life. See how trapped you really are. So don't be discouraged that the meditation seems to actually make you feel more trapped. I know how to be free, I'll just get up off the mat, start, stretch. Go sit in a comfy chair, find a soft bed. That's how I free myself. Well, hopefully eventually that changes. Generally through the practice, that's what changes. You start to see that's not the way out. That's not what's trapping me. It's not the lack of a soft bed or a comfortable chair. It's the need for those things. It's the inability to stand the pain and the hardness and the discomfort. It's the inability to stand our own mind, our own presence, our own reality. Anyway, so there you go. There's some opening words, because this is the new year and this is our first broadcast, and this is my first talk to all of our new meditators. Except we have Brenna is here. She reminds me that she was with us in Stony Creek. Couldn't remember where, but Brenna is here. Some of you know Brenna, I think. Javen is here. Javen was here last year. Javen might be a long-term. We'll see how long he lasts. I've got 2 new guys, one staying for various periods. Maybe you'll get to meet them. There you go. That's the Dhamma for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to our daily Dhamma broadcast. Today I thought I'd go back to the basics. Last night I mentioned a little bit about the experience of being mindful, how it changes your perception of the experience. Our ordinary perception of experience is often clouded. It's wrong, to put it bluntly. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the experience of mindfulness, the very basics of our practice of mindfulness. And of course, to do that, we go back to the Satipatthana Sutta in the Digha Nikaya, number 22, and in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 10. And so at the very beginning of this sutta, of course, we have the Ekayano Ayang Bhikkhave Maggo. We have the Buddha's expression of why he's teaching mindfulness, to purify beings, and for the purification, right, of the mind, for overcoming or overcoming mental illness, sorrow, lamentation, despair, for overcoming mental and physical suffering, for finding the right path, and for seeing Nibbana. But then he dives right into what it's like. What does it mean to be mindful? And he lays out the 4 Satipatthana. So the 4 Satipatthana, it's not important that you're able to categorize. The point is not to be able to recognize this is this satipatthana. Now I'm practicing this one, now I'm practicing that one. It's more of a map, a laying out the framework by describing these 4 different aspects of experience, or 4 different types of experience, or ways of looking at experience. He really fleshes out the whole sphere of what it means to experience. So you can look at experience physically. There's the physical aspects, the rising and falling of the stomach, that's physical. The lifting of the foot, the feeling of the tension in the leg, the feeling of the foot pressing against the floor, that's physical. Even just the feeling of sitting still, the tension in the back and the pressure against the floor. Heat and cold, that's all physical. That's kaya kayanupassi viharati, one dwells seeing the body as body. Or in the body, one sees it as body. In regards to the body, one sees body. Vedana is the second one. So if you focus on the feeling aspect of experience, if you feel pain, to be mindful of it as pain. If you feel happy, to be mindful of that. If you feel calm. So the 3 main feelings. Vedana, how you experience something. Do you experience it as pleasant, as painful, or as neutral? If you focus on the mental aspect of experience, citte cittanupassi viharati, thinking about the past or future, good thoughts, bad thoughts. Doesn't matter what kind of thought, it's all thinking. And then Dhamma, which is a little bit unique, it deals with, it's much more, it's different in quality than the others. Some of it deals very much with present experience, for example, the hindrances. Those are very much a part of our experience, liking, disliking, drowsiness, distraction, doubt. But there's much more in there. There's the senses, again, that's part of it, but then it gets on to there's the aggregates, there's the bojjhangas, there's the truths, noble truths. So it's much more about, it's much more doctrinal. Which is why I think it's called Dhamma. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The essence of our practice is our experience, based on the 4 satipatthana. But it's the quality that's most interesting. Because quantity is fairly straightforward, right? You can tell me how many hours of meditation. The meditators will often tell me how many hours of meditation they've done. I often tell the story of how I subbed in at a center that was quite adamant about the number of hours a meditator should do a day, so they would assign a number of hours. And I have to say I don't find this to be incredibly helpful, because it wasn't really working, at least for the foreign meditators who would spend all the time outside of their hours doing nothing. So I taught them how to be mindful from morning to night. I told them, today you have to do 18 hours of meditation. Which means I don't care how much formal meditation you do as much as you can comfortably. But outside of that time I want you to be mindful, to have the quality of mindfulness. Hours are nothing. You can walk and sit for hours. In the end, it's both quality and quantity. Because on the other hand, as we'll see as I go through these, what we don't want is to become complacent. We don't want to think that I'm mindful and that's good enough. Mindfulness doesn't work that way. So we have 3 qualities of what it means to be mindful. Atapi sampajano satima. I'll go through these briefly. Atapi is a word that relates to temperature, heat. We use the word, that's where the etymology of it is. So it's used in a sense of exertion. And the commentaries, I think, refer to it as that which burns up the defilements. That's apt because we become complacent even in meditation. Like even if at some moment we're very mindful, this is how mindfulness becomes a hindrance, because you're mindful and then you cling to the fact that you're mindful. Meaning you become content. Oh yes, I'm very mindful now, and you're not anymore at that moment. Once you think about it and once you get attached to it, you're immediately no longer mindful. So atapi is the effort that we put out to build up quantity and quality, both. Both quality and quantity, which means you can't just practice for hours without having the mental energy to see the rising and the falling. Put the mind with the object. When you walk, is your mind with the foot? Are you aware of the foot moving? Or are you letting your mind wander? And then quantity, are you doing it again the next moment? Are you moving from, are you mindful of the next experience and the next experience? It takes an incredible amount of effort, an incredible amount of mental rectitude, so uprightness of mind, straightness of mind, to keep yourself from sliding back into, oh, it's okay, I'll just take it easy for a bit, right? Something you have to train at, something that requires quantity to get good at. You have to do it again and again, and to really gain concentration, which is not mentioned here, but to get to the point where you're focused, which is what everyone understands as important in meditation. You have to practice, you have to cultivate it repeatedly, moment after moment. You can't slack off. Sampajano means to know something. But it's sampa. Sampa, these are prefixes to the word janya. Janya just means to know. Sampajano means to know something. But sam and pa mean, they're like regarding wisdom, really. But in the context, in the way they're used in the Satipatthana Sutta, it seems to refer to, a good way of understanding would be being aware, or self-awareness. It's a word that's often used. Meaning, the knowledge that we're looking for is not like the knowledge that I am a monk, or that I am a man, or that I am human, or that I'm living in Hamilton. I mean, these are all knowledges, but they're not sampajanya. Things we know about the past or the future are also not sampajanya. Sampajanya is a really good word for reminding us of the present moment, reminding us that mindfulness has to be done now, has to refer to the present. What's happening now? If you are aware of what's happening now, meaning you see things, you see what is as it is. You're not lost in your head, judging it or reacting to it. You're clearly aware of the experience. That's sampajanya. It's a way of using the word knowledge, but it means awareness. Do you really know what's going on? Do you really know what's happening? Know in the sense of being aware of it. And finally, satima. Satima is really the key. It's what cements your awareness. It's what keeps you straight. It's what keeps your mind from floating away, from drifting away. It keeps your mind fixed on the object. Mindfulness is what, sati is what grasps the object. But it's grasps in the way we use this word in English, when you grasp a concept. Someone tells you something and they try to explain something, and when you grasp, they ask, do you have a good grasp of what I explained to you? Well, we use the same thing to apply to experience. We all experience and we're aware of our experiences without mindfulness, without sati. Sati isn't just awareness. As dogs are aware, does a dog know whether it's walking? Yes, a dog knows that it's walking. We all know what's happening. If someone rings the doorbell, we all are aware of the sound. The awareness is there. It's not yet mindfulness. It's not yet satipatthana. Satipatthana is where you fix your sati, fix your mind on the object, remembering it. Sati really means remembering, or remembrance. The proximate cause of sati is something we call tira sanya. Sanya is a recognition of something. When you see this as this, that is that. So when you know the doorbell is ringing and you hear the sound, there's a sanya. Ah, yes, that's a sound. You recognize it. Tira sanya is where you... Tira means you augment or you reaffirm that perception. So it can refer to a concept. Like if you say to yourself, Buddha, Buddha, thinking of the Buddha. Or if there's a doorbell and you think of yourself, doorbell, doorbell, doorbell. That's mindfulness, but it's not vipassana. So it's still mindfulness. It's not satipatthana in the way the Buddha is explaining it in this sutta. Although parts of this sutta are samatha, like the cemetery contemplations. The real core of it is vipassana, which means the object has to be experienced. And so you can't say doorbell, doorbell. You have to say hearing, hearing, because that's the experience. But when you remind yourself hearing, you're augmenting, you're strengthening that perception. You're fixing your mind and you're grasping that perception fully and completely. And that's what allows this change in perception. That's what allows us to see clearly, where before we were confused or mistaken. The things that we thought brought us happiness, when we apply mindfulness, and it's the only way, we can break through the veil of ignorance, to see things in a whole new way. It's quite eye-opening. So that's what the Buddha says in the first section, and then he starts talking about the various... He goes through each of the four satipatthana in various ways by which one can practice sati. At the end of most of the sections, he says, I think all of the sections, he says, for example, for the body, he says, one sees iti ajjatang va kaye kayanupassi viharati. So one dwells in regards to the body, seeing it as body, seeing body. And then one sees the arising of body and the ceasing of body. One watches, meaning one is really aware of the experience from beginning to end. I mean, this is really what makes this an experiential practice. It's not about knowing, okay, now I'm walking. It's about really experiencing the beginning of a movement and the end of a movement. That's the samudaya dhammanupassi or vaya dhammanupassi. And then at the end he says something that I'm really quite interested in. It says, Atikayoti va panasa satipachupatita hoti. One establishes mindfulness just to the extent atikayo, there is the body, or this is body. Meaning really it is what it is really the point. Not it is body, but that thing is what it is. Body is body, walking is walking, and so on. In the Sampajanya Pabba he says, Gachanto va gacchami ti vajanati. When going, one knows, I am going, I am walking. Gacchami. Pali grammar is different from English, so one word means I am walking. In English we just say walking, walking. But in Pali you say gacchami, which also has the first person pronoun, or first person subject embedded in it. And then Yavadeva Jnana Mataya Patisati Mataya. Just for knowledge. Just enough for knowledge and patisati, which means, not quite sure, but I used to like this word. Patisati means just mindfulness, just being mindful. This is the whole seeing things as they are. It's not adding anything. So instead of saying this is good, this is bad, this is me, this is mine, we say this is this. And if you're aware of that, that moment is mindfulness. You're aware of things as they are. Oh, I missed something from the last section. There's another important thing. Anyway, it fits with what I'm going to say next. But the Buddha says, Vineya lokeya bija domanasang. It's just important to mention. By practicing sati, we are overcoming. The idea is to overcome judgment, really. Liking and disliking. Because when you don't have... Ajahn Tong, he picks this apart. And so this section... or that passage, it says one puts aside liking and disliking. Greed and anger, really, is what is it saying. And then the question is, what about delusion? Because there are three bases for unwholesomeness, and there are greed, anger, and delusion. Why isn't delusion here? And as I mentioned last night, this is because of this concept of mindfulness being like a light. So greed and anger rely upon delusion. But delusion can't exist with mindfulness. So when you're mindful, delusion is gone. You can still be mindful of greed and anger, at least the way they present themselves in your experience. But at the moment when you're mindful, delusion is already gone. It's the opposite. Mindfulness is the opposite of delusion. And then he says, anisito javiharati, related to this. Anisito, one dwells independent. Remember earlier, a few days ago, I was talking about the duality, and one of the dualities is how dependency is vulnerability, the Buddha said. Those who are dependent are vulnerable. Those who are independent are invincible, invulnerable. And you see this in various places, and it's a very good description of the power of mindfulness. That we have here a practice that makes you completely invincible, completely impervious to suffering, impervious to the trials and tribulations of samsara. Natya kinchi loke upadhyati, one clings to nothing in this world. This is how you do it. If you want to be free from suffering, if you want to be invincible, don't cling to anything. It's really, the Buddha said this is the only thing you really need to know about Buddhism. If you want to practice, the only thing you really need to know before you start learning how to meditate, sabbe dhamma na lang abhinivesaya. No dhammas, nothing, no thing is worth clinging to. Evaṁ ko bhikkhave bhikkhukaye kayanupassi vihati. This is how one practices mindfulness. This is how one practices to be mindful of the four foundations of mindfulness. So it's quite simple. There's not a lot to it. But it's also quite concrete, the difference between mindfulness and ordinary experience. Mindfulness is a deliberate, intentional, active, moment-by-moment activity. It's like pounding away at metal. Buddha used this simile of the analogy of pounding, like a blacksmith. When they heat it up and they pound it. Every time you're mindful, it's like you pick up the hammer and you hit the metal. Now you can't hit it once and then sit there and watch it and say, boy, what a good hit that was, or think that you did something. You have to keep, every time, it has to be the same, every moment. Every time that you hit it, it becomes straighter. Mindfulness is this tool that we use to straighten our minds. So we apply it moment by moment. Obviously it's in the beginning, for sure it's going to be hit and miss, some moments mindful, some moments not mindful. But it's very important we see the clear distinction there. You can only measure moments. You can't measure hours, days, months. We'll talk about how many years they've been meditating. It's not really that useful. What's useful to talk about is the moments. How good are you at being mindful, moment to moment? How many moments a day are you mindful? So, there you go, a little bit about mindfulness tonight. Again, basics, but the most important part of our teaching, really. So, thank you all for tuning in. Wish you all the best.